Well, let me introduce you to our guest. Live from Berlin, we have Julius van der Laar. He's a political consultant and a regular contributor to the programme. Thanks for joining us, Julius. We appreciate your time.
Good to be here.
Mark is with us from Austria. He's got in touch. Mark, thanks for joining us. Let's hope Mark can hear us. And Guy Verhofstadt, I apologise, is a former Belgian Prime Minister, now leader of the Liberals and Democrats in the European Parliament. He's live from the BBC's office in Brussels. And Guy, we invited you onto the programme because you've written an article lots of our viewers have been looking at, arguing that this crisis may make Europe stronger and the euro stronger. Just explain that to us.
Well, I think that this crisis is not only a crisis about Greece, but it's mainly a crisis about the capability of the European Union to create a real economic union. And it's not, I should say, old-style federalist was saying that. No, mainly Mr. Lipsky, the head of the International Monetary Fund, and Mr. Geithner, the Minister of Finance of the US, have said 2 days ago that Europeans now have to establish this political and economic union if they overcome this crisis. Julius, do you agree with that?
Look, I think there are a number of issues here, and this has been we've been discussing this for several times now. The main point is, how do we go forward here? And I think it's clear that there's going to be a bailout, and that the European community is going to stand up and provide necessary funds to the Greek people. And obviously the Greek people have to do their share of making sure that they change their systems and become more responsible with their spending. But the question that's at stake here, I think, is not just a Greek crisis. I think it's a European crisis. And my question is, how do we go forward with that? And how do we reestablish a European identity?
Guy, do you agree we're in the middle of a European crisis?
Well, I think it's mainly a crisis about Europe. We are at a crossroad now for the moment. Shall we become a loose confederation of nation states, what I call a UN of Europe? Or shall we further go on the path of a US of Europe, a United States of Europe, a real federal entity as we have at the other side of the Atlantic? That's the crossroad where we are on for the moment.
Let's pull up this message from Dino in South Africa on Facebook saying, giving Greece more loans is only going to kick the can down the road longer. The truth is that Greece is bankrupt. Unless huge amounts of Greek debt are forgiven, Greece is going to default sooner rather than later. Well, let's get all of you to respond to that, starting with Julius in Berlin. Do you agree with that analysis?
First of all, you just laid out the options, and I think we've tried the approach of taking it a financial union, and clearly that hasn't worked. Look, for the last 20 years, we've all, especially the wealthy countries, and obviously I'm here in Germany, we've benefited greatly from this, and we've been able to export our goods all over Europe, and the smaller countries in Europe, such as Greece, haven't been able to get their fair share out of it. So the question of making this just financial union doesn't work. I think we have to ask a different question, and whether it's a European question of aspirations, something that's greater than just the individual states, but something that's more important than just money, currency, or economy. But we have to somehow unify around ideals and common interests, not just financial interests, because clearly this is the way we're doing it right now isn't working.
But Guy, is that actually what Europeans want?
I think yes. I think that the only good way forward is a political and economic union. Because that's also the best way to create wealth in the European Union. And it is not necessary for that to harmonize everything inside the European Union. What we need is a policy of convergence, where the different economies of the European Union are following the same path. So can I make a comparison? Look to what is happening in California and to what is happening in Greece. In California, people, the state has no even money to pay their civil servants. But nevertheless, there is no pressure on the dollar. And a small economy like Greece is putting pressure on the whole European Union and on the euro. The difference between the US and Europe is that they have a political and economic union behind the US, and we don't have it. So California is no problem, and Greece is a big problem. And the only way forward is to create this political and economic union in Europe.
First things first, the Eurozone should acknowledge a huge mistake was made when Greece joined in 2002. It started borrowing money at very cheap rates, public spending went through the roof, salaries in the public sector in Greece have almost doubled since it joined the euro. Julius, in Berlin, wasn't that a fundamental error by the German government and other powerful governments within the eurozone?
Look, if you look at our exports, especially over here in Germany, I don't think it was an error at all. We've been able to sell our goods all over Europe, and we've been able to lend our money and do pretty well with it. So from an economic perspective, I think we've done pretty well. The question is, was that a strategic view, and is it now are we now getting the bill for that? But you mentioned something about Europe and how we proceed forward. And the question, I listened to Angela Merkel, German Chancellor, speak on Wednesday, and she mentioned that, going forward, and the key learning from this is that in the Eurozone, we have to be able to make the decision of kicking a single country out of the Eurozone. And I wonder what kind of question or what kind of message this is sending to especially smaller countries who are not able to pay their debt. And again, this is a question of, is this just an economic union, or is it a more than just an kind of economic union? And this is a union that we identify with. And if you put out the message that, you're happy to kick someone out of the Eurozone if they're not able to pay up and not put the structures in place to make sure that everyone has the potential to stay in it, I think that's a fundamental difference.
And Guy, I can hear you wanting to pick up on that point. I'm sure Sean does as well.
Because I think
if I could just ask you to hold that thought, we're going to take a break for a couple of minutes, and then I promise I will come straight back to you and continue right where we've left off.